Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So I think it's safe to say after last night's rumored Chris Kreider to the Anaheim Ducks trade broke, that shit might hit the fan relatively soon in the NHL. In terms of big trades, you look at last year during the Cup final, I believe the PLD Kemper deal, Markstrom to the New Jersey Devils, as well as the Ullmark deal, all happened during the Cup final. So teams are getting ready to make pretty massive moves. So I decided to go on my Instagram and ask you guys for your off-season takes, whether that's certain guys getting traded, what teams should or should not do, what will eventually happen, what's going to happen in the draft, free agency. So we're going to go through them now. We have like 20 of your takes. Shout out to everybody that sent them in. And yeah, let's dive into it. Let's not waste any time. And up first from Shane, Zibanejad won't be a Ranger come September. And yeah, it's looking like Chris Drury is ready to trade some guys, dumping Chris Kreider, probably going to get, I believe it was Kerry Terrence and some kind of mid-round pick is what it's speculated right now. He needs to waive his no-trade clause. So until that, it's not official. But yeah, he's definitely looking to free up some salary cap space. I think he's probably going to move off Keandre Miller as well. The $4 to $5 million that he was going to give him. Zibanejad is going to be tough, though, considering he has a full no-trade clause. According to a beat reporter, he submitted like 3 or 4 teams that he would be willing to go to. I'm sure that those teams are pretty damn good teams that don't want anything to do with his like 5 years left at $8.5 million. So I'm not sure how realistic Zibanejad is at this point. I think that they're going to move off Miller, move off Kreider, and then swing for Jason Robertson or something like that. Zibanejad might be next offseason or 2 seasons from now. I think you're kind of stuck with him at this point. Next up from Liam Borman, McDavid and Bouchard combined AAV is less than $25 million for their extension. Let's start with Devin Bouchard, who is a restricted free agent this summer. Meanwhile, McDavid's extension eligible, not a free agent until the following year. Bouchard, I think we can agree at this point, it's got to be $10 million, even though he is an RFA. What he has done the last 2 years, especially in the playoffs, I mean, last year he still had like 81 points. This year around like 70. He should get $10 million. He's 25 years old. He's in the middle of his prime or just entering his prime. So it should be 10. I'd probably say 10.5 seems about right when looking at the landscape of the league, looking at Jacob Chikrin, who's a year or two older and just got $9 million. So I think 10.5 is fair for Bouchard. That means McDavid would have to take 14.5. I think he's probably going to be closer to 14.75, $15 million. And for the sake of the league, for the sake of the Players Association, they need McDavid to take 15.25. Because if McDavid decides, I'll just take the same as Draisaitl, that's kind of bad for the overall league in terms of guys getting paid big money, especially in that 2026 free agency class. If McDavid just takes 14, then their teams are going to be like, we're only giving you 12.5, 13 if the best player in the league was willing to take a discount. So I think McDavid's probably going to come in at around 14.75, 15. So I personally set that over under at 25.3, 25.4, but you're not too far off in that regard. Next up, speaking of extensions, ACP sends in Lane Hutson extension, 8 years, 8.5. I assume that you're kind of trolling with this. I would be shocked if he signs this summer for anything below $9 million. $8.75 million. But you look at what he did in his rookie year as a 2022 draftee, historic, literally historic, set the single season rookie assist record. So if I'm him, I'm holding out for 9.2, 9.5, 9.75, or I'm just saying, I'll put up these stats again. I'll put up these stats. We're only going to be a better team next season, especially offensively. So let me put up another season, and then you got to pay me 9.75. You got to pay me $10 million. And if I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, I'm honestly giving him 9.25, 9.5, and not even thinking about it, considering the fact that he probably has a floor of being the 5th to 8th best offensive defenseman in the NHL already come his prime. Again, he hasn't even reached his goddamn prime. So 8x8, obviously very unrealistic, but I think 8x9.5, you're very happy if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, given what he showed, especially offensively in this season. Next up, oh, that's the same one. Next up, C Diet Rich says Marner gets $13+ million from a wild card team. And yeah, I think if Marner is not going to some kind of top tier contender and no state income tax like a Vegas, Dallas, or a Florida, I think someone's gonna have to fork over a lot of money. Anaheim is already apparently preparing the Godfather offer of like $14.25 million. If he's going to go to a Utah Mammoth or something like that, it's going to have to be a serious 13 to $13.25 million contract. Because Mitch Marner, at the end of the day, is more so of a money first guy, considering what happened with his restricted free agency. We all remember that. So yeah, I think It all depends on the team. And when looking at the potential teams, this leads us into our next one, Tyler Rod 21. Vegas is the perfect fit for Mitch Marner, and they will figure out a way to get him. And yeah, if he goes to Vegas where there is no state income tax and where they have other guys like Jack Eichel, I think it would only be $12.75 million. Jack Eichel's probably going to sign for around $12.75, $13 million. They would have to move out some money. I saw something being theorized that they're already building up, like Petrangelo's no good. He's going to be on LTIR all season or start on LTIR. And then Mark Stone's going to go on LTIR. I think that William Karlsson is a guy that they could potentially look to dump to open up money for Mitch Marner. We're going to talk about Karlsson and his potential destinations later on in this video. But yeah, I am very high in Vegas next season just because I know that they're going to do something batshit insane. And Mitch Marner just makes sense in terms of him becoming the villain, going to the Vegas School of the Knights, and immediately becoming an absolute monster playoff performer, most likely. Oilers Hub says Porter Martone falls out of the top 9. You look at this 3 to 4 months ago, you'd think that they were absolutely insane for suggesting this. It is somewhat possible now, especially after the draft combine where Brady Martin might go 4th overall. It is definitely likely. Let's just roll through. 1st overall, Schaefer. 2nd overall, Misa. 3rd overall, Frundell. Just doing like a mock draft off the top of my head. Martin, Hagen's 5th. Denoyer 6th. Jake O'Brien 7th. And then you have the Seattle Kraken. Would they go defenseman over a Porter Martone? Definitely possible. If Merck is there at 9th for Buffalo, I think that they take him over Porter Martone. So it is definitely possible. It's a hot take, don't get me wrong. But yeah, he definitely could fall past 10th or 11th. He will not fall past 11th overall or something ridiculous like that. But considering 8 and 9 are, if a right-handed defenseman's there for Buffalo, and Seattle probably should prioritize defense, although I think I'd personally probably take Porter Martone compared to some of the other guys. It's possible to a degree, especially considering some of the fears over his skating. He's not that good of a skater. Not a horrendous one by any stretch, but Porter Martone could be basically all the forwards in this draft outside of like Michael Bisev could fall a decent amount. This draft is going to be absolute carnage in terms of like 3 through 11 for the most part. Next up from Mr. Plesia, I think Marner would be a good fit on Minnesota. The GM just won't let that happen. Bill Currid, that'd be very weird if he was like, Marco Rossi, you're way too small and not physical to be on my team. Mitch Marner, here's $13 million, especially considering they got to pay a kind of smaller guy. Kaprizov's not that small, but they got to pay Kaprizov next season as well. Giving Mitch Marner $13 million would not make a ton of sense, and especially considering he's trying to build a heavier team. You look at who he brought to the U.S., to the 4 Nations. Nelson, Kreider, Trocheck's not that big, but brought like a physical 4th line compared to some of the other more so skilled guys like a Clayton Keller. Next up, we got something from Ham Pratt. Jason Robertson to Carolina for 2 firsts, 2 thirds, and Scott Morrow / Nadell. I see what you're doing there. That's basically the exact same goddamn return as the Mikko Rantanen trade. And yeah, if I was Carolina, I would definitely do this. Just give Dallas back their picks, and you basically just swapped Rantanen and Nadeau for Stankoven and Robertson. It all depends. We're going to talk about whether or not Dallas should trade Robertson in this later, but I would definitely do this if I was Carolina. If I'm Dallas, I would need more of a proven commodity in terms of an NHL-ready body. I'd probably need another pick on top of that. If it was like Sean Walker, especially if I'm getting my own picks back, considering I know that I'm probably be a good team throughout this. But I think maybe throwing like a Sean Walker who would immediately become their best right-handed defenseman, then it would make a little bit more sense. And probably Jackson Blake instead of Nadeau, if it wasn't Nadeau, just because Jackson Blake's NHL proven. But definitely interesting. I don't expect that to happen because that would be hilarious if after the Rantanen trade, then they just give them Robertson. Not very likely, but I appreciate the takery. Next up, Lock 0007. Ehlers hits July 1st, realizes there isn't a good fit, and re-signs with Winnipeg. And yeah, I said this in the podcast. I feel like he's going to get underpaid wherever he goes. And maybe he just says, okay, Winnipeg's offering me 7 years at $8.1 million. The best offer somewhere out there is in some small market that's not even as good as Winnipeg, and it's 7 years, $8.4 million. Because I think, guys, if Sam Bennett hits the market, he's going to get absolutely paid. Other bigger guys, more playoff physical guys will get paid. We saw that last offseason as well. Meanwhile, a fast, skilled guy like Ehlers might end up getting shafted in terms of getting those big offers. So I definitely could see a situation where I think he's definitely going to hit the July 1st, but I could see him just say, okay, I want to be a Winnipeg Jet for life now. The grass isn't always greener somewhere else, and I'm not getting paid $1 million more like I maybe thought. Let me just re-sign with the Winnipeg Jets. Alex Lynch, 427, says the Devils trade Dougie for an underwhelming haul. You don't know what the God's honest truth is. Dougie Hamilton is a net negative player at this point. He has 3 years left at $9 million. If you could dump him and get the equivalent of like a second and a third round pick back, you'd obviously want more so NHL bodies. But I don't think that there's really an underwhelming return for Dougie Hamilton at this point, considering the fact that they have a bunch of young guys within the system that maybe could be NHL ready relatively soon. Luke Hughes is ready for a bigger workload in terms of potentially becoming their number one defenseman. Like if they could move off Dougie Hamilton and spend that $9 million more effectively, I think that's something you definitely look at, because when he plays, you can argue he is worth $9 million. The problem is, over his Devils career, he's averaged like 55 games a season. It has been really underwhelming in terms of what he's brought to the table. Obviously, that 2023 season, 70 points, was Norris finalist level, arguably. But besides that, it has been very inconsistent and not very available for Dougie Hamilton, where I think you potentially try to move off him. He obviously has more value than like a Chris Kreider. I'm not saying that. But if you could get a younger, cheaper player for Dougie Hamilton, I think you'd definitely look at that and let Luke Hughes kind of run with it. Next up, Duncan McFive says, Sam Bennett should not be paid more than $7 million on his next deal, 50-point guy. And I agree. Regular season Sam Bennett is a $6.5 to $7 million guy. He gives you 25 goals, 25 assists. But at the end of the day, he has consistently elevated his play basically every single season. Also in Florida, he doesn't get top power play time. If you sign somewhere else, gets top power play time. That is an extra like 8 to 10 points potentially. So when looking at it, he just does show up in the playoffs. I really don't know how to put it. Like what he's been in Florida, I know that he won't be the exact same in a system where he doesn't have a Barkov in front of him drawing attention and he's playing with smash mouth guys like Matthew Tkachuk. But I do push back on the idea that he's worth less than $7 million. If I was a team that was a high-level contender and had solid wings to play with him, like a Minnesota Wild potentially, I'd be willing to give him low eights. I know that might be crazy, but if I know that I'm going to be a year-in, year-out playoff team, Sam Bennett does really appeal to me. I agree, like a fringe playoff team, like my New York Islanders signing Sam Bennett makes no fucking sense. Seattle Kraken signing Sam Bennett, no sense, because they got to get into the playoffs, let alone worry about Sam Bennett, let alone value Sam Bennett come playoff time. So yeah, it really just depends on the team fit. But $7 million, saying that he's a $6.5 million guy is a little bit absurd in my opinion. S. McLaren 06 says, Bowen Byram to the Red Wings. Wings actually make the playoffs with Sider taking true number one step. And yeah, I guess I never thought about Byram to the Buffalo Sabres just because it is an in-division trade. But I think that does make a lot of sense in terms of he'd be by far their clearest number 3 defenseman, arguably the number 2 guy at least next season over Simon Edvinsson. And yeah, they badly need defensive help. They're going to have to potentially dump a Tarasenko, dump a Chiarot to really open up some solid cap space. But I would definitely like Bowen Byram. He fits right in. Same age as Moritz Seider, a year older than a Lucas Raymond. I like that idea a decent amount, just a little bit unsure if they would trade him in division, if you get what I'm saying. Next up, the Aviator 43 Capitals go all out for Ovechkin's final season. If you're talking all out, like you're trading Cole Hutson, Ilya Protas, first round picks, I got to disagree with you pretty heavily on that, just because after this season, you can clearly see the path to the Washington Capitals competing at a high level, maybe not exactly contending, but competing at a very high level and maybe getting to contention, true contention level over the next decade. Like they're in such a good spot. I understand maybe trading a younger guy to get immediate help, but it has to be someone that is under the age of 30. I don't want to see them taking swings on Mikael Granlund, taking away time for some of their young guys like Ryan Leonard. And I think at this year's deadline, if they're a safe playoff team, you go aggressive, you trade a first round pick and maybe a prospect, but this summer they should not be going for it. Rentals, trading a metric shit ton, considering the fact that they found guys like PLD, found guys like Dylan Strome to lengthen their window, Rasmus Sandin, and as well as drafting and developing very well. As much as it would suck to just be like a wild card team for Ovechkin's final season, you want a Stanley Cup. It's not like you never won a Stanley Cup and you got to really go for it. Ovechkin is a legend. You got the goal record with Ovechkin, but this team is really going to be set up after Ovechkin, so I don't think you blow your load this season, if you get what I mean. Lou Jacobs says, talking about William Karlsson, Leafs trade for Marchessault or William Karlsson. Marchessault, I could definitely understand, again, similarly to a Sam Bennett, consistently a playoff riser every single year. William Karlsson really intrigues me, though, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, considering the fact that if Sam Bennett's not going to be available, there's not really, now Brock Nelson is signed as well, there's not really any serious second-line upgrades over John Tavares. It's not like they have the assets to really trade unless you want to dump an Easton Cowan, who's going to be making nothing on his ELC. So, yeah, I like the idea of potentially trading for William Karlsson. I don't exactly know what that would look like, but maybe it would be if a handshake deal. You trade Mitch Marner's rights or something like that to the Vegas Golden Knights and get William Karlsson in return. Having like a hybrid 2A, 2B kind of center situation, being able to move Scott Laughton down to that fourth line center position because he was so bad against the Florida Panthers. And yeah, John Tavares taking a cheap deal at around 5 to 5.5, maybe even $6 million because William Karlsson only has 2 years left at $5.9 million and still is a damn good, solid two-way second liner. So I think that's definitely something that Toronto should be looking at. And I think that the Winnipeg Jets should really be looking at William Karlsson as well. Franny Boy 06, move off their first. I don't know if Vegas would want a first-round pick, future assets, but definitely try to make a William Karlsson deal happen. If they go from Nemestikov, I don't remember who their fourth-line center was, to then next season having Scheifele, Karlsson, Lowry once he comes back from his injury, and then Jonathan Toews potentially on the fourth line, they might have the deepest center core in the entire NHL. So I think for Winnipeg, prioritizing that second line center position, not saying that's why they lost to the Dallas Stars, but that has been a weakness in prior seasons. I think that they should definitely be aggressive after a William Karlsson. And next up, Max Chappell AZ says, unappealing markets should fail to sign UFAs, should be deemed the winners of free agency this year. And yeah, sometimes the best moves are making no moves. You ask a Boston Bruins fan that, if they didn't make the Lindholm and Zadorov moves and just save the salary cap space, and they would have been in a much better spot this summer in terms of it. So yeah, usually in free agency, a lot of the deals are pretty dog shit because it's 28 to 31-year-olds getting long-ass term deals. So although you definitely want to be in the market to potentially land some of these guys because sometimes there is a Zach Hyman absolute steal, it's not the end of the world if somebody says, yeah, I don't want to take your 7-year offer at $7 million and then they immediately fall off the cliff. So yeah, that's some copium, but I think valid copium for some of the smaller markets. Connor Johnson says Penguins clear house and trade Raquel, Rust, and Karlsson for a slum of picks and prospects. And yeah, man, I totally agree with you. I talked about it on the podcast as well. Go watch the podcast. They should nuke it, especially after hiring Dan Muse, who has such roots in development in terms of being a former college coach, two-time USHL coach with the Chicago Steel, as well as the U.S. National Team Development Program. Nuke this shit, man. Trade at least 2 of those guys for sure. If he doesn't trade at least 1 of those guys, because not only to get the picks and prospects now, to suck enough next season and the following season to get McKenna and DuPont and maybe just slightly nudge Sidney Crosby and say, dude, this is what's going to happen the next 2 to 3 years. You're more than happy to stay and mentor these guys. Or we can trade you for 2 first-round picks or something like that and a great prospect or maybe a good young roster player and kind of move off him. So, yeah, if I'm Kyle Dubas and Crosby and Malkin and Letang, you can't even move Letang. Letang's deal so bad. But those 2 are like, we want to stay here for life. You don't. At this point, you tried with the Karlsson. You got to just say, we got to start blowing it up. Next up, Callie Mooney says, Flames offer sheet, at least 1 major RFA. And yeah, I think Conroy's going to be potentially aggressive in terms of offering offer sheets. You know, the problem is someone does have to sign it. Like, I hate to be a dick, but willingly going to Calgary in terms of free agency doesn't happen that often. But yeah, they should be all over like a Maverick Bork, offer him $4.6 million. That second round pick, that second round range, teams that are cap struck and you're only giving up a second round pick, I would really like the Calgary Flames to do. I don't think that they should do something huge unless it's like JJ Peterka giving up your first round pick next season. So I think if Dustin Wolf comes back down to earth a little bit, it could potentially stink. But yeah, if I'm a Calgary and a bunch of other young, rebuilding, retooling teams that are trying to get younger, offer sheets this summer should be very aggressive and very much flying. FreeX Talk says Sharks become a wild card contender. And yes, hypothetically, they have the salary cap space and the assets to potentially trade for some guys. But I would not do that if I was in my career. I think 1 more year of sucking probably is the plan. I wouldn't hate the idea of targeting, talked about it on the podcast as well, maybe going after like a Keandre Miller, guys under the age of 27 that are maybe distressed assets at this time that want to move off their teams, like a Marco Rossi, like a JJ Peterka, something like that I'd be down for San Jose. But in terms of signing older veteran guys to long-term deals, I don't think you rush it, especially when such a talent is there at first overall. If it was the 2022 draft, yeah, maybe you want to be good next season and kind of get out of the rebuild. But next season, there's nothing wrong. As they were a 52-point team too, so like in order to be a wild card team, they would have to do a lot this summer. So yeah, one more year of suck. Don't rush it if you're Mike Guerrier. I don't think you should be nuclear blowing it up at the deadline like they did last year, or trading three of your best players, not blowing it up, but trading Granlund, Wallman, and Blackwood. You should be starting to get some of the pieces that are going to be here for the long haul, but I would not. They just shouldn't do anything aggressive this offseason. Next up, Kyle Belland says, Kane's butt fumble the offseason. And yeah, if they swing and miss on some of the top guys, like a Mitch Marner, like a Nikolai Ehlers, like a Sam Bennett, they might get stuck with like paying Brock Besser $8.25 million. Mikael Granlund, you want a 5x5 or something like that? Like, although I trust Eric Tulsky, again, as talking about before, the teams that don't do much might be the winners. Carolina might force themselves into doing some pretty horrendous trades this offseason, and that could kind of be a disaster. But I trust Tulsky. And then lastly, from Caps coverage, if Dallas trades Robo, they miss the playoffs in 2025, 2026. You can't replace stars like him. But I think that's a little bit hyperbolic. Could I see Winnipeg was already better than them last year, obviously. Could I see them, Colorado, in Minnesota being better? Yes. In the Central Division, missing the playoffs entirely. What teams are going to catch them in terms of being 106 points? I don't think the Flames are going to have another gear to get to 100 points or something like that. Even let's say Dallas falls off a little bit. Vancouver's a total shit show at this point. So missing the playoffs, I think, is hyperbolic. But yeah, they could be in serious wild card consideration, considering some of the other teams in the Western Conference might be getting better. It's the thing is also with Robertson, it's not like they're trading him for future assets. They're doing it so they could re-sign Granlund, Duchesne, Ben next season. I agree. Long-term, horrible to trade Jason Robertson unless you get a great package. But in the short term, it's not going to kill them. Like, the right side of the defense sucks, but even if they lose Robertson and then bring back Duchesne and Granlund, they still have a very good forward court. They still have a very good starting goalie. They still have two of the best left-handed defensemen in the NHL, and Lindell is pretty damn good in his own right. So I think we got to pump the brakes just a little bit. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about these offseason takes? I'll be seeing the next one. Again, follow me on Instagram. I'll put the link tree down below so you can submit on these. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.